Well, hello, Wrecker.
Hey, Nick, how you doing?
Really good, really good. Hey, so our last podcast on failure,
Was a success. The failure was a success.
and our good friend, you know how I know it's a success? I was just in a meeting before this with our good friend Stefan Zeidel, and
Oh
he
yeah.
said he said finally you did something that was interesting, and it's like, okay, great.
Wow. We got Stefan's nod of approval.
We got his nod of approval, and he really liked the way that we had three different styles. It was you and me, and then we had Laurie Wessel with us, and we had three much different styles for coping with setbacks, and we talked about resiliency, and then I was thinking about it. Before that, we were talking about criticism.
Yeah, and jerks in the audience.
So I'm thinking if we listen to our last two podcasts, we're really painting a negative picture of our field, aren't we?
Yeah, we do, and it's funny because I think you and I were both quite romantic, right? I mean, like when you talk about academia, you paint this romantic ideal of a scholar that sits and ponders the great questions, slowly and carefully and so forth. And here we are just saying, well, our listeners are jerks, basically, and we don't like reviews either, and we had to fight all the time. We have to fight, fight for jobs and fight for the paper and so forth, and everything is hard. But so it begs the question: why are you doing this, Nick? Why are you doing this? You had a successful career. You were an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny before we ask why we're doing it, because I agree with you. I think you and I both have a romantic vision, and I wonder if you need that kind of romantic, noble vision of scholarship to love this thing that we do, right? Because you want to aspire to it. But I think it's funny because as you were painting my romantic vision, you said slow. Rewind the tape. You still are accusing me of being slow. This is awful. By the way, for our listeners, I'm not slow. I'm a very quick and effective person. I'm just not Wrecker who knocks everything out within minutes of accomplishing it, right? So,
well, I also talked about how I'm, I at the moment I'm really grappling with the negative consequences of my strategy getting things done. I'm really like, yeah. Anyway, as you said, because if you get things done, there's more things to get done. Yeah. So you said one interesting thing that we didn't actually follow up in that last failure episode. You said, well, the interesting thing is that academia attracts a lot of A students, and A students, they don't like to be criticized. They don't want to have bad grades. And I thought that was a really interesting point. And I think you're right. And if I look at myself, to be honest, I was an A student, right? I had great grades in high school. I had, one of the best grades in the faculty stuff as well. Yeah. So, and I hated when I had a B, and when I had a C plus or something in it as a grade. I hated it. Yeah. On the German system with 2 minors or whatever. Yeah. So I did hate that. Absolutely. So I'm exactly the kind of guy that you said I would be. Yeah.
Well, and what's funny is I was a bad student, right? So the first time I went through undergrad, I was not paying attention. I just wanted to get out. I wasn't really that interested at all and go work. And I didn't want to. It was only after I sold my business that I came back to get my master's, and that's when I fell in love with the academic enterprise. Right? I met Kale, Dick Boland, Youngjin. They invited me into a research group, and they're sitting around in this room talking about concepts, and they invited me in the research group because what I did for a living applied. They were studying Frank Gehry and his use of these CAD, computer aided design tools, and I did that kind of stuff for a living before. So and I'm like, wow, these guys get paid to sit around and talk. And there were 4 grad students there at the time. Uri Gal was there, Ryan Baxter.
Oh, that's how you know Uri Gal. He was a grad student. Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't know that.
He was ahead of me at Case Western. But so and then I'm like, wow, they get paid. And you got to realize I was coming from a consulting background where we were solving people's IT problems in a sense, right? We were specializing in product lifecycle management, but it was implementation. It was getting things working. It was getting people trained. It was troubleshooting. Then it was getting more sold. And sometimes it felt like Groundhog Day, where you're doing the same thing at a different organization, same thing, different organization. And then I thought it was so refreshing you read one book in a paper, and then you read a different book in a different paper. So on the one hand, it's Groundhog Day in the sense that repeated, but on the other, by the way, when I say Groundhog Day, do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the movie.
Yeah. All right. You know,
Yeah. No, I don't think any of our listeners will know this. And you know why? Because it's a movie from what, like 80s or the 90s? 80s.
yeah.
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 Anyway, so late 80s or early 90s. And how do I know this? Because I was in class the other week, and I actually talked about the predictive policing paper by Lauren Wardenburg and the other ladies from KIN, which I love, right? Predictive policing in the Netherlands. And I was like, look, guys, this is Minority Report. It's a reality. And I stared into blank faces. I was like, wait a second, you guys don't know Minority Report? And then I checked, oh my God, that was from 2001. And today's students don't know Minority Report because it's an old movie.
Well, and Minority Report, I think wasn't that a Philip K. Dick short story, actually?
That I don't know that.
Yeah. Oh. All right. So anyway, so that's when I fell in love, and that's when I decided, hey, I want to try this academic. It was during my MBA, and they invited me into the PhD. And but there I was really fortunate, because if you look in our field, someone like Young-Jin Yu, who we've had on here, he's a thinker. He really he reads the books, he pushes his thinking. He loves to play with ideas. You can engage him in a 3-hour conversation talking about ideas, not ever discussing a paper, not ever writing, not ever having, but actually. And I remember during my PhD, I would go to Young-Jin's office and we would sit there for a couple of hours talking about whatever. And that to me, so I was fortunate enough to be kind of raised in that environment. I was attracted to that environment, and that what you're calling the romantic idea of a scholar, right? Someone who actually gets paid to think is really what we are. Now we have to show proof of our thinking by writing it up, right? And that's the price of admission, is that we have to, and we teach, and teaching is a huge privilege. But the price of admission is that we have to do grading. Although you in Europe, you don't have to do any grading, right?
No, I don't do a lot of grading personally anymore, thank heavens. But I agree with the rest. See, last week I was giving a paper talk. I was talking actually about that org science paper where we use simulation and build theory about technology and organizing. And I was talking about it to a university in Hong Kong. And then afterwards, one of the members in the audience said, wow, you talk with so much passion. Yeah. And sort of, wow, you're so excited about this. And I was thinking, well, of course I am. Why wouldn't you be? Why isn't everybody, so excited about it? Because you can do what you want. You can do what you like. And of course, then I'm passionate about it. So it perplexed me to think about, how could you possibly talk about research of yours without passion and excitement? I wouldn't have done the research in the first place if that were the case. Have you ever thought one of your research that you weren't passionate about?
Well, no. Well, first of all, yes, and those are the ones that I've struggled with the most. So there have been a couple of occasions where, I have a co-author that had great data. We had a great idea. They were leading, and then maybe they went off to industry or something. Right. Yeah. And or left academia for whatever reason, didn't pursue the work. And then I felt it should be continued. So I worked on it myself.
Yeah, I do that
and
too.
Those are my worst experiences as an academic, because it's not mine. I didn't lead it. I was supporting someone else leading it. And now it's just me finishing a paper because I feel like it should be finished, and I would hate to see it go to waste. And it's like pulling teeth to get me. I'll sit down and I won't want to work at it. And I'll look at it with, and that is not fun for me. But yeah, the projects that I'm leading or initiating or a joint collaborator where someone else and I together are doing it. We're both, like you and I, the couple times we've worked together, it's very collaborative. We come up with the idea, we're both contributing, and we move it along quickly. Like, those are incredibly fun. And I find very little problem getting motivated but I think you're right. If we have this tremendous luxury of a job where we are paid to think and paid to essentially have a perspective on something, and if you're not passionate about it, that's really sad. If you're not really interested in what you're doing and passionate about your view, how, like we had the American pragmatism episode. Yeah. I'm passionate about American pragmatism. I'm I
think the world has come to realize that by now.
Yeah, but I'm a partisan. I think this is the answer. right to our epistemological and actually our ethical issues. I think epistemology and ethics are intertwined, right? What we think of what knowledge and what we think the appropriate course of action should be. And to me, this is how we solve major ethical problems of the world. This is how we break, polarizing divides. This is how we do things, right? Through a pragmatist approach. And I'm passionate about it, and I love it, and I read it. And I couldn't imagine doing this if I wasn't passionate about something.
Yeah, so that's one reason. My other rationalization for the same observation is, I think it's a logical consequence because this job comes with failure and it comes with pressure, and it's one of these jobs where actually you have to put in a lot of hours. Yeah, you will not become a tenured full professors with lots of papers and blah 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 and fame and great ideas by putting in 15 hours a week. It just doesn't work. Yeah, right. So you have to put in the effort. Everywhere else as well, of course, but you have to fight. You have to work hard. You have to work long hours sometimes. But of course, it has certain perks. And one of the wonderful perks is, of course, this you get paid to think. You get paid to pursue your own ideas, and you have. And so therefore, I think you have to do that. You have to do the things that you love, and you do them with passion. Because if I don't do this, then I don't, sort of realize this perk. And then I may as well do something else where either I work less or get more money or,
Yeah, there are ways. And here's the deal. I've never really understood the work less. I knew when I started, so I was a business owner and I was a bit of a workaholic. And when we had kids, my wife and I, and I was talking to her about this idea of going to get a PhD, we kind of thought, hey, I'll dial it back a little. I can be around where the kids are. When they're little, I can be at home. I can do all of this, and I won't be such a workaholic. Well, that lasted a very short period of time because I got very excited about this academic thing. And there I was always reading books and papers and all of that. And this academia can fill up literally every waking moment of your life, right?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what the beauty is. All of my kids, I was their soccer coach when they were very little. You can arrange your life in such a way that literally, if it's children's soccer practice in the afternoons and in the spring, you can arrange your entire teaching schedule, your life and everything so that you are there for every single soccer practice. I taught my sons, I was one of his wrestling coaches for 5 years before we moved up north. And I literally made it a priority during wrestling season 3 times a week to go be a wrestling coach, right? A lot of careers when I was a consultant, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have organized my life around my kids wrestling. I was still working a lot, but it's incredibly flexible work.
It's incredibly flexible work. I fully agree with you. I mean, I organize my work around the life of my kids and my partner as well. And I feel incredibly privileged that I get the chance to do that, right? So I bring them to school, I pick them up from school, the kindergarten. I just came and picked up my boy from hockey and stuff like this. And whenever there's something up, I'm here and I get to see them grow. Especially in these early years, it's wonderful. And I see my friends and I see the rest of my family. My brother-in-law, he gets up at 7, puts on a suit and goes. He runs his own business. He goes to work and he comes home when the kids are asleep. And I'm so happy that I actually get to see them. Well, it's sometimes stressful, of course, and I don't get to work when it's best for my work necessarily, right? But I wouldn't change it for the world. Absolutely not.
I think it's great, by the way, that your kid is doing hockey because I know that you were a basketball player and I know that hockey and basketball are the same season. So judging by when you and I played one-on-one and I wiped up the floor with you in basketball, I think it's very good that your kid has chosen a different sport. So maybe he'll
actually, I also think it's good that he's taken different sports and one that I have no idea, but I never played hockey. I don't know, but it's a thing here where we live, right? So a lot of people play hockey. It's a nice team sport.
Total fun sport. It's a lifestyle though, hockey. You don't just become a hockey player, you are a hockey player. Right? It's not something you do. Well, it's something
it's the same with us, right? We don't work as an academic. You are academics, I think. I mean, see, you mentioned this, well, you still have to put in long hours and stuff. Well, I think what sometimes is difficult, you can't not work, you can't not think. That not thinking about your work really takes days. It takes practice. So when I go on holiday, like a vacation, it literally takes days for me to stop thinking. Yeah, it's really tough sometimes. You don't think so?
I never do that. I just bring books on vacation, and
no.
You don't. You can actually.
I don't. I want to have real breaks, Because then after a few days or a week or two or whatever, then I really want to get back to work. And I'm really looking forward to this.
So you're, that's the work-life balance idea where there's like life and then there's work and there's work. I don't buy that. I think that my identity is in part I love reading things that are maybe challenging and difficult, even if it's in my spare time. I also like reading fun things, but I don't think I need that division between work and not work.
No, I don't think I divide that either. It's just that I don't think I'll bring a methods textbooks to to my holiday, but I do bring, sometimes I read philosophy or something. Yeah. But I also sometimes just read a crime novel or, whatever who's up in the bestseller list and stuff like that.
So these are a couple of reasons that I think academia is great. First of all, intellectual stimulation, where literally any day you can, like, say, for example, when I moved to Notre Dame, I started reading moral philosophy, and I want to write some things, and I've already started to write a couple of things on ethics. And you can just reinvent yourself like that. Artificial intelligence, right? I didn't study that for the first decade of my career. And now with Stefan, we're doing a bunch of research. With you, we did some research, and you and I did the special issue on managing AI, right? You can kind of reinvent and pick the areas you want to explore. So it's not just flexibility in your personal life, it's flexibility in your work life. You pick what you want to do, right?
Yeah, and you should. That's what I mean. I think it's also imperative. You should. And I do see students. Maybe it's another European thing. I do see students, and they're working on thesis projects that they're not passionate about. Sometimes it's because that's where the funding comes from, right? So, and then they're being forced to do this project on something, right? And I find that sad because the idea is that you pick your own ideas and work on them. I think that's important. To me, it also means, because I'm not a single idea kind of guy, so that means I also change. So since we did the Managing AI special issue, I didn't do a lot of AI research before then, but since then I do. It really got me interested, and then since I'm interested, I'll do some stuff on this.
Yep. And you and I have discussed this way back when we had Will Vander Elst and Brian Pentland on, when we were talking about, well, you have to do what's passionate, or do what you're passionate about. And what you mentioned about the students is less about, so maybe you're working on a project that you're not passionate about. My argument would be get passionate about it, right? Get good, focus on it, learn. You might not have passion initially, but you'll find something to be passionate about there when you build the knowledge, when you build the capabilities, right? I didn't have passion for pragmatist philosophy when I started. And that's why I read the hard stuff. I read some of the, epistemology. It wasn't all sitting well. Some things interested me more than others. The pursuit of knowledge was interesting, but I didn't get passionate about or partisan in my thinking for a while. It had to grow. And then so passion, I think, grows. I think setting the expectation that you have to be passionate about your topic, or else you're going to be miserable. Again, it's a marathon, right? You have to pick a topic you can become passionate about, I guess, would be more. Right?
Yeah, and also, I think it's something to also find. You mentioned flexibility before, right? Flexibility of intellectual pursuits, flexibility of working hours. I think there's at least two more dimensions of flexibility. One of which is what you're engaging yourself in, right? So you can do a few things over the years, and you don't have to do them forever, right? So, for example, I in Australia, when I was promoted to full professor, that came with this chair, which was with really tightly coupled with industry, right, with Woolworth. And I thought to myself, is that something I want to do? Like a real intensive, engaged model where I had to work with them a lot, and they are in Sydney, so I flew there every week or something. It was a super frequent flyer. Anyway, and I thought, well, I'll do that now for a couple of years, and then after a while, I might just do something else. And I did, yeah. And after 6 years or so, I thought, well, I really don't want to do all this industry engagement anymore. I'll sit down and do only theoretical work. And then for 6 years, really from 2015 to 2020, I wrote, for my, it's like what I think a lot of theory and review papers, only conceptual papers. And there's, some of them were successful, some were not. And then I got bored with this, and I was like, wow, I really want to do field work. So for the last couple of years, we're doing site visits, we're doing interviews, I ran around and looked at organizations and do stuff. And I really enjoy that. And I know in a few years, I'll change again, probably. That's why, because I like that flexibility of, changing approaches and topics and even, where you put your emphasis in your academic life.
Yeah, and you're very capable. You can do that, and maybe not everyone can do that. But I'll tell you what you're pointing at is this beauty. So when you choose an academic life, it's infinitely flexible. Now you happen to be putting those in some sort of linear sequence, right? But if you look at it, I remember I heard of this one professor, and it was at a decent university, not an elite university or anything, where he had a particular niche in forensics, and he was making $1 million a year being a
forensics expert
an expert witness in court trials, right? Around data security and that sort of thing. So you could be an expert witness. You could be a teacher, right? There are here in the US anyway, there's an entire teaching line where, and really teaching is one of the most fulfilling parts of our jobs. You get young people, you change their lives oftentimes, but some of the biggest influences people have had on their lives were their teachers, right?
Yeah.
And that's not really a research game. You have to finish the dissertation in the US to be a university professor in most situations, but that doesn't mean you have to do this. So there are those that do consulting. There are those that are authors, like popular press authors, So I think
true.
the beauty of academia is that we've got a guy here at Notre Dame. His name's Mike Chappell. He's security. So he's written a bunch of books on passing the security CISO test, which is CSIP, right? It's the security professionals test. So he's written books on that. He has a YouTube video on that. He does LinkedIn courses on that. He's built he's one of our teaching professors, but he's built an entire industry around helping people get certified in security, right? And he's a respect. So the beauty of this job is that it's not just what you and I chose to do, which is kind of the research scholarly route. There are another handful of avenues.
And I think I mentioned this before. Andrew Pettigrew from Oxford, he once gave a talk sort of in a career development workshop type of setting. And he said, well, there's different academic identities. The researcher, that is really good with methods and he carries out paper projects and, does studies to do. Then there's the scholar, the one that ponders the deep questions of our time, etc. There's the public intellectual. Yeah. And then there is the teacher. And I think I'm missing one, right? And he said, well, there's 4 or 5 different types of identity. And I like to think of it and say, well, these are identities you can assume for a while. If I can be a researcher, that does not mean I'll have to do this forever. Yeah. And so when I once talked at a postdoc workshop, I sort of built on that idea. And I said, well, think about it. Maybe what type of identities do you might want to aspire? Maybe it's a good idea to be a researcher for a while. Get your papers out, get into the system, etc. Maybe then you can become a scholar or a public intellectual, or, and then for a while you can do, a lot of stuff in teaching. And then, it doesn't have to be, it's a process, right? Yeah. Identity construction.
And then there's something else about being a professor. And this might sound base or something, but, we are social animals and we do live to an extent by the approval of other human beings, right? Like we want to, especially men. I guess there's with Facebook and with a lot of social media, there's been increasing number of suicides among 40 and 50-year-old men. And one of the arguments I heard, I haven't heard any, I haven't looked into this deeply, but I was listening to a podcast. And they were talking about one of the reasons was comparison. You look on social media now, maybe LinkedIn, Facebook, and you see other people who appear far more successful than you. And when you're young, that maybe it means one thing to you, but as you get old and you see your peers, going to Hawaii and being CEOs and getting accolades and whatever, you start thinking negatively about yourself, right? And I think that there is this element of status. There is this element of legitimacy that, to me, being a professor takes it all off the table. I know once you become a professor, you never have to pay attention to it. I can be in any room with any people, with whatever. And it's like, you're a professor, you have enough. You can put me with the military generals. You can put me with CEOs. You can put me with literally anyone. I don't have to worry about status. It's taken care of for me. That box is checked.
Oh, okay. That's what you mean. Because I thought you meant something else. Because I do think when you are a professor, I think this peer comparison is very prevalent. How many papers do you have versus I? Which of us has more citations? Oh my God, you published another paper that makes me look bad. And I do think we do a lot of this comparison sort of stuff, right? It feeds into the imposter syndrome that many have. And we talked about this before, but I do think, don't you think that professors compare themselves all the time?
I guess they do. I mean, I don't know. I think that I kind of look at it as a categorical. So I don't know. I have no idea how many papers you've published, but I know it's a heck of a lot. Now, I compare you to other people who have published a heck of a lot of papers. I don't know who's more or less. You're just in that category of those people who publish a heck of a lot. So I think
you know what annoys me all the time. It's a little bit of a tangent, but you know what? Like, forget about papers. Think about citations to your friends. I always think like, I cite you guys. I cite a lot of Berente papers, and I cite a lot of Seidel papers, and I cite a lot of Jan Mentling, and stuff like that. You guys never cite me. You guys never cite me. No. My friends never cite me, and I hate it.
Oh, geez.
Because I always think, of course, that my work is relevant to, anyone's work, and it should be cited. But my friends
I'll tell you what, if you write more papers with me, I'll cite you. You're saying we don't cite you. That's awful.
Yeah, go and have a look. Now that I put this into your brain and you have awareness, I expect more citations.
I'm going to make sure I cite you then. Okay. But then I have to go back and I have to read, there's representation theory and
because that's all I do.
Conceptual modeling stuff.
Hey, by the way, I found out that, this is really getting traction in some new areas. I mean, I found some new work that I hadn't read before, and I read that yesterday that's also building representations. Anyway, so it's a sidetrack. Hey, I wanted to say one more thing about the flexibility. Yeah. Of academia as a great profession. So we had a flexibility in intellectual pursuits and ideas. We had flexibility of working hours and, when you work. And actually, it's a great job to have kids. Don't you think? Anyway, right? So if you're a CEO, you're never home. Yeah. If you're an entrepreneur, you're never home. Yeah. But as an academic, why not? I can say, I'm really sorry. I can't see during the pandemic. Now we had a baby and my wife is on maternity leave. But when she was not in the pandemic and we had our kids at home in the lockdown, we literally said, well, I work on Monday, you work on Tuesday, I work on Wednesday and on Thursday. And it was, it was so easy to organize this because all I had to do was say, I'm sorry, guys, I can't meet Wednesdays. End of story. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's the only change I needed to do in my professional organizational life. I said, I'm sorry, can't meet Wednesdays. See you Thursday. Bye.
And literally any email I get, if I decide to just have a day where I don't look at email, or it could be one of the most important emails, and I don't even just think of what an important email is to a professor, other than a student maybe having something burning for class the next day. Other than a couple student issues, for the most part, I can ignore any email for at least a week and then reply to it, and no one cares. Right. Yeah. Nothing we do now. I wouldn't do that, but we have this tremendous, ability to create our own situations. Right.
And there's a fifth element to this. Yeah. The fifth element of flexibility, I think, is flexibility of who you work with.
Yeah.
And not what you work in or when you work, but also with whom you work. Where else in the world do you have that?
Yeah. You pick exactly who you're going to work with.
You pick your friends. You basically, if you do it right, you will only ever work with your friends. Isn't that wonderful? And lots of laughter. See, I was reading a paper, and in the paper they made a reference to Tversky and Kahneman.
Yeah.
And how they came up with all their Nobel Prize winning theories and stuff. And the passage goes, well, they were always in this office together, and the door was closed, and all you heard was laughter. They just had fun all the time, Yeah. So, and I was thinking, yeah, that's true. In most, like if I think about some of the calls and the work that we're doing with Youngjin and Brian, or the paper in Org Science that I did with Brian and Youngjin, man, that was fun. That was fun. We would just goofed around. We worked really hard for years. It was a lot of work. I mean, the simulation, we had like 6,000 runs of the simulation, lots of statistics and stuff. But man, it was so fun. Yeah, it was fun because people that have compatible humor, and it's just good fun. And our managing AI special issue, for the most part, was fun. It was a lot of work, right? Crowded out papers that he could have written, but it was fun, wasn't it?
So, it was totally fun.
And that's great, right? And then again, I think then the ramification or the corollary is that, well, if it's not fun, and if you're not working with people that you enjoy working with, well, stop doing that. And if you have something where you work with someone that is actually fun to work with, well, do more of that. And it doesn't even have to be a paper, right? Maybe you want to organize a workshop together or something. Fun things are fun. And that's wonderful. Yeah. My wife is a senior IT project manager. She is being told, this is your project. This is your project team. This is your client. Poof, do it.
She get to pick it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess so that's the beauty of our job. You can kind of create your own job. When you say have fun, that doesn't mean it's just always joyful. It is hard work, and hard work is fulfilling and meaningful. Not always fun, but it's kind of punctuated by fun or bracketed by fun, right? And I think it's fulfilling and uplifting. Certainly, there's an element of fun. I don't know if it's always. No,
it's not. And you know what? It's good that it's not, because you wouldn't recognize that it is fun. You need to have a baseline, a comparison. If everything was great about this job, you wouldn't realize it's great. Yeah. So of course, not everything about my job is great. Absolutely not. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who never had experience in industry and their professors, they emphasize the difficult part of professorhood, where they're like, all right, man, this is grueling. This is tough. This is tough. They don't realize how much better it is in academia than outside, because we have our politics, we have our issues, but it's just so much. Especially if you do well, you can immediately just remove yourself from all politics. If you publish, if you're a good professor, if you're a really good, you have a job for life, and you don't have to worry about the little heel biting that happens.
So, see, Laurie said that, right? And I think he made this really wonderful point. And he said something, do a little bit of that thing that makes you happy and that you enjoy doing, do a little bit every day, right? That was his strategy for becoming resilient. I was like, wow, that's great, because I don't necessarily do this. I don't look after myself in the sense that I make sure that every day I do a little bit of writing or something, or whatever I enjoy. But I think it's a great strategy. If you can operationalize it this way, that's a good thing to do. I don't necessarily do it, but I think it's great advice. Yeah. Do a little bit of what makes you happy.
You can have a cynical, critical attitude about how awful things, or you can have an appreciative, generous attitude where you give your fellow academics the benefit. And I think if you have the appreciative, generous attitude, you'll be happier. It just can't help it. Now, the downside is, of course, that professors tend to make less money. You can do well if you did well as a professor. You can certainly raise a family and all of that, but for the most part, unless you go to the author route or something, you're not going to be a multi-millionaire.
No, you're not going to be a multi-millionaire, but I haven't seen a poor professor. Not in our field. Yeah, most of the professors that I know, here in Germany, they have Porsches and Jaguars and expensive cars, and they tend to live in big houses. I mean, what do you want? I mean, yeah. Mm. So you're gonna become Elon Musk and buy Twitter. No, you're probably not gonna do that as a professor. But you also, don't have to rent a flat or something for the rest of your life either, right? So
here in the U.S. in business schools, right, we do well. We do just fine. My wife doesn't work. She stays at home, and we raised a family of 3 in suburban America at the best schools and doing whatever. And we didn't have to worry about anything. So yeah, it's not rich, but it's certainly never lacking for anything. Right. So to have such a stable, fulfilling job and at the same time not lack for anything, I think it's a wonderful calling. And I think of it as a calling. It's not a profession. It's not a job. It's a calling. It's what I do. It's who I am. It's kind of like your kid in hockey, right? He will be a hockey player. He'll have a hockey player attitude. There's a certain way hockey players interact with the world. I've had them in my class here, the Notre Dame hockey players. You can spot them when they walk in together, right?
Oh, yeah. I think you're right with the calling, because especially in our field, right? Information systems, business and technology. If you do that and you learn that and you study this, well, really, the world is your oyster. Yeah, if then money becomes a driving force, well, go and become a CIO. And I have friends that have done that, and they're, CIOs, or, direct, they work in the industry and of course they make more money than me. Yeah. Okay. So if that were a driver, then I wouldn't be here. So it has to be something else. And as I said, so it has to be something else. And yes, it's a calling, the intellectual pursuit. But I also think you got to make sure then that you grab these perks and make them yours. That means, to me, I want to spend time with my kids. I want to be entirely flexible in when and how I work. Like, I don't I don't care that people look at me like, you never work. Well, that's not true. I work enough and I work a lot and so forth. I just don't do it in this 9 to 5 thingy that most other professions have. And I want to make sure that I only do the things that I love and am passionate about, etc. I don't want to work on projects that I don't like. Why not? Because if I take that away, then, a lot of that wonderfulness of this job goes away. And then I still, because there's still these negative aspects, there's still failure and still all this criticism that I receive and stuff. So I think it also means that you have to really do the perks, which also means over the last 2 years, some of these perks were basically taken away. The conferences, the social aspect of it, which I love. Yeah, I love hanging out and I love talking about it, etc. I think that's why we're doing this. It gives a chance to just talk about science and research and all these sorts of topics.
We haven't seen each other. When's the last time I saw you in person?
I think in Munich, 2019.
It was 2019. That's so funny. And it's 2022. So it'll be 3 years. But it's so funny because I feel like I see you all the time. We have some projects we work on. We did the managing AI thing. It's like I see you.
But I want to celebrate that. I want to celebrate this. And over the last couple of years, I couldn't celebrate. So we did this managing AI, especially. I was really proud of that. Yeah. But I didn't get to celebrate. With whom? I should go downstairs and talk to my wife. Laura, we published this managing AI special issue in MIS Quarterly. What's an MIS Quarterly? What's the best journal? Why? I don't know. Help me, woman. So I can't do this, which is great because she grounds me, of course. But I do want to celebrate this. It's extraordinary stuff, and I hadn't had the chance. And I sit, I'm not going to sit here with a beer and stand in the screen a lot, right?
You're coming to the States next year, right? 2023. Well, Julian, we'll visit him in Arizona State, and you and I are gonna
we're gonna go there
time. Maybe because I'm not going to go to ISIS this year.
Why not?
I've decided I'm only going to ISIS when it's in the US for the next few years.
Because you're a patriot or something?
Yeah, no, because my kids are in college, and when they come, I have one, and then another one's going to go, and I realize they come home exactly when ISIS starts. So I'd rather, with my kids awake, I want to be home when they're home. I don't want to go off.
Wow. Imagine you do that in any other job and say like, hi, boss, I'm sorry, this is the most important event for our profession. I'm not going to go because my daughter is home. Your boss would say, no, you're not. You got to go. Get your ass over there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe I could be talked into a particular one, but I'm going to try and skip Copenhagen this year. And it's because my daughter's coming home from college. I want to be home when she's home because I realize that any additional time with her is going to be so precious. She's leaving me. So I'm home.
No, I'm really hopeful that I can go, sort of try not to worry about COVID or something hitting us again in winter, because I want to see people again. I want to see friends. And I also want to see, whatever, my enemies or something, right? I want to see these people. So you see like, hey, we're all nice guys. We're actually all nice guys.
You can't come to Academy of Management because you had some sort of holiday or something you were doing.
No, well, that's when my kids have the childcare institutions are closed or the schools are closed. This is my holiday time, and I'm not gonna say I'm sorry, but I'll go off to Atlanta for 2 weeks or something.
It's Seattle. So wait, let me tell you about Academy of Management real quick. I'll do a commercial. I'm on this 5-year rotation for CTO, which is the former OSIS, right?
Yep.
It's whatever.
Communication and technology and organizing.
Digital technology and organizing. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm on this rotation. I'm doing the doctoral consortium. We have the coolest doctoral consortium. We have a good dozen people from Europe. We had a lot of people, like multiples from the same university. So we just picked one per university. We have phenomenal doctoral consortium. And the thing that I love about it is that it's people who are doing, of course, kind of qualitative and organizational work. We have a bunch of econometrics people. We have a bunch of design science, computer science, AI, machine learning people. It's becoming kind of the place to go for, like, I guess we'd call it IS 2.0. IS 1.0 is, implementation, development, all the things we did. Whatever's coming next, I think the CTO might be that organization that is, and it's also the place for you Germans to enter the Academy of Management, right?
So I've never been, right? I actually never been to AUM.
Biggest management conference.
I know it is. But CTO or OCIS, my sense is it's growing. Is it growing? Like the membership?
It grew this year. It had the name change. It's CTO. It's growing. It grew this year significantly. And, I'm going to be part of this rotation, and we're going to grow it more. And we want Germans, design science, all of you people in your, So anyways, so that's CTO, and this is going to be cool. We have a bunch of PDWs. So even for any of our listeners that are interested in going, the most important thing you want to go to the paper sessions and all that. You want to see if you can get into a doctoral consortium or junior faculty consortium. But the PDWs are by far the best part of this conference.
Yeah.
And these professional, and we're starting to do them now at ICES because they're so cool at Academy of Management. They do multiple hours, so they're usually longer. You dig into a topic really deeply. So we have PDWs on bots and social networks. We have
cool.
PDWs on
with Carolina.
Yeah, with Carolina and Salj and Aaron Schechter at University of Georgia and some other. So they're actually spending a couple of hours focused on the main issues of bots and social networks. Then there are a whole bunch of cool ones using algorithms, studying algorithms, doing computationally intensive work, research. And
well, I've done PDWs at AOM on entrepreneurship and external enablement of entrepreneurship as sort of in that tradition of opportunity creation, opportunity discovery, and then enablement with my friend and colleague Per Davidson. Satish was there, I think, and Echo Audio and these types of guys. And we've done some at ICES as well on digital entrepreneurship, which was really fun. Like a day-long workshop, basically. Yeah.
So the thing that I like about Academy of Management, I always go to Academy of Management. That's really my number one conference. And then ICES would be like my number two. The reason I love Academy of Management is because, first of all, there's our division, which is CTO division, but I also belong to TIM, which is Technology and Innovation Management. These are going to be more of your strategy folks. But it's really, then there's an entrepreneurship division. There's a philosophy division. There's like a equity and inclusion. So what's really cool is you can not only do the CTO stuff, the stuff that's in your field, but we're in business schools, right? Sometimes you want to go see that, Andrew Van de Ven, I don't know if you know this, he just died.
Yeah, right? I know.
But it would be so cool. I remember seeing him at Academy of Management, and he's the most wonderful human being in the world, but he has that Engaged Scholarship book that he wrote. I remember him when I was a PhD student, right after he wrote that book, or maybe I was done with my PhD. I would go to Academy of Management. He was talking about his book. And here you can see Andrew Van de Ven right in front of you talking about a book that is, a phenomenal book. And so that's just it. You can see these guys, Pettigrew, who you mentioned, right? These guys you see there, the folks in our field. You meet people from other kind of tangential related areas like entrepreneurship, like technology and innovation management. So to me, it's the most interesting, and it's huge. It takes over the entire city. Most cities can't handle Academy of Management.
Well, I think I can't handle that volume. I sometimes get if ICES gets too large, I'm sort of get a little bit uncomfortable with too many people. Andy Van de Ven, he was an editor of one of my papers in Academy of Management Discoveries, that journal that is sort of inductive, right? Discovery exploratory research, which I think is a great idea, right? Great journal.
Phenomenal.
Anyway, he was the editor on our paper, and he was a great editor, because he gave us a lot of leeway.
He was a kind man.
Yeah.
He was a brilliant man. He was a gentleman. He was this big guy. He was larger than life. So I've had a couple of run-ins with him in my history. I'm sure he didn't remember, but he was nothing but generous and wonderful. He's one of those people he came up with nominal group technique in like the 1960s. So that was him. That was his dissertation, was nominal group technique. And then he did so many things over the years. And if you just go look at his history, he's one of those people that really impacted so many different years of so many different careers. And he is the innovation. If you're an organizational innovation person and you haven't read his innovation journey, which is his book about the Minnesota project,
Minnesota program. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the defining, that should be the touchstone for anybody studying organizational innovation, right? He's just awesome.
I have a little exercise for you to wrap things up here, because I did a little bit of stats looking up, right? So what I did, Nick, and I'm going to ask you some questions though. You know that 9 months ago, we did the managing a special issue. And while we were preparing it, we always try to predict, okay, this paper will be cited a lot and that paper will be cited a lot. So what I've done is I looked up citations as of now, and I want you to guess from our 7 papers and our editorial, which is the most cited paper, do you think? Let's see how good you are in your scholarship. Because I know you haven't looked it up because you're lazy.
I have not looked anything up. Well, at the time, and you have to go more than 6 months
I
out.
know,
These were
I
just
know. It's
published.
really early days and stuff.
But at
You
the
know, it's
time, I said that the Tedorescu
yeah,
paper, which is on
the INL
fairness,
paper, the fairness paper. You always said
yeah,
it gets a lot of
I said that's going to
citations.
be the most cited, right?
No, it's
Is
not.
it? Ah.
Give me another one.
Oh, let's think. So you know who cites the qualitative papers are cited the most, probably. So the two qualitative, the two ethnographies, the one by
Wow.
Sarah Leibovitz and the one by the gang up there.
Yeah, by Elmira.
Yeah.
Elmira Vandenbroek. Hey, very good, Nick. That was actually impressive. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The two ethnographies were the most cited papers. From our editorial is the most cited one, but that I think that doesn't count because it's
our editorial
usually,
is
yeah.
good. Hey,
Yeah.
that's good news.
Well, it's not huge numbers yet, yeah. So
Okay.
hold your horses a little bit.
But I think the reason it's the ethnographies are is because the qualitative researchers were already writing their papers for ISIS, and then they saw those come out, so they cited them, right? Yeah. So the qualitative researchers do that. Analytical modelers and those folks don't cite each other much. You know, it's bad. You could write brilliant, wonderful work, and you just don't get cited. Yeah. So the beauty of organizational and qualitative work is they cite each other.
Yeah, good job. Also, what I also did, must have been bored. I also looked up the, we did an episode on every single one of these papers, right? And I looked up the listening stats on each of the episodes, and then I correlated them to see whether I could fit a straight line, to see whether the episodes that are listened to more often is also the ones on most cited papers. And the R square that I achieved here is 0.59.
Oh wow!
But there's quite a few outliers. Yeah.
So is it? So it does correlate, but not. But we don't have enough quantity yet, right?
No, of course not. There's they have something between 10 and 30 citations. So of course, if you think about it, it's 9 months. Yeah, paper comes out, you have to read it, you have to do your study, you have to get that published. That takes a while. So I think all that impact. That's why I always tell students that don't look too much at citation. It just favors the old. It always favors the old. But the old guys have huge citations. Of course, they had more time for their ideas and findings and stuff to impact others. Yeah? Of course.
So speaking of citations, and we've talked about this in the past, this will be my question to you to wrap things up. When you go back, you're a scholar, you're a researcher, you love this. Was there a book or an article that you read that really just, you said you're romantic, you have this romantic view of it, right? Is there something you read that really put that that bug in your ear to do this?
The book that really comes to my mind is a book that was really popular. It's a popular pop sort of book in the early 2000s, Freakonomics.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so it was,
really?
Yeah, it was a bestseller, and I grabbed it off the shelf and I read it, and I loved it. And I was like, wow, these scientists, they're so cool, how they disprove what our common assumptions are, and what really happened in New York City with the zero tolerance policy, and stuff like this. So I was like, wow, this is so cool that they find out what's really going on. And I remember all these cases, right? So they had the New York City the police
broken
stuff,
window thing,
the broken window thing that it went back to contraception in the 70s, and the what's the other one? The in Chicago,
they had a finding where if you had a weird name, and then they wouldn't look at your job application anymore. I bet you that's changed dramatically since, because we have so many people from Asia here in the US now. We had a president called Barack Obama, right? I think the different name thing has probably changed in the US pretty significantly, right? I think the US is fine with. I was teaching at University of Georgia when I started in 2010. I was teaching this big, huge class, an intro class, and the number one name was Johnson. Because in Georgia, you would, a lot of people are named Johnson. And by the last time I taught that class, I looked at the rolls. You know what the number one name was? Last name? It was Patel.
Patel. Oh yeah.
Patel. Okay. So it was an Indian name. So I think what's happening in the U.S. is that that finding in Freakonomics probably doesn't hold anymore. I bet you people are way more open to just all sorts of names.
That could be the case. It's the same with Jan, by the way, right? So Jan, you know a lot of Jans, and there are
too many Jans.
You know too many Jans, and one of the simple reasons is in the year that I was born, that was just the most popular baby name in Germany, right? And sort of if you think of Jan Mendling and Jan van Broek and me, sort of all similar age, it was just a popular name in the late 70s, and.
Is Jan the same as John? Is it the same name?
Yeah,
or is it?
I think so. Yeah. So in Australia, it's Jan, and it's a girl's name. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Jan. There's a very famous. There's a very famous commercial in the 70s or 80s about Not Happy Jan, and Jan is an office worker, and then she's always grumpy and she's always not happy. Yeah, not happy Jan. And then some guy comes in and gives her a Coke. I think it was a Diet Coke or something. And then she's happy. Yeah. So that was always a running gag about me, not happy Jan.
Well, and then they give you a beer and you're
no one gave me a Coke. The other thing that always happened. So I'm sitting in my office and the phone rings. And like, yeah, hi, it's Jan. Hi, it's Jan. I want to talk to Jan, please. Yeah, that's me. Oh, and then they're always disappointed because they want to talk to this, lady with a beautiful voice, and they get this grumpy, not happy Jan with a weird German accent. So all my phone calls always started with disappointment.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to talk to you. Yeah. All right, my brother. So, yeah, look, I think it was important, I think, to follow up 2 episodes where we talked about some of the negative sides with one to basically where we said we love this, what we're doing, right? And I hope that many other people do this too. Yeah, and
agreed.
That's good, right? So what are you up to now?
Right. Phenomenal conclusion there, right?
I know. My little one is running around between my legs here, so it's even hard to concentrate.
You dropped the mic on that finish. Yeah, no. Bottom line is, you're right. This is our calling. I think we both love it. And I think that's one of the reasons we like working with each other, because we both see that in each other, that we enjoy this and we take it very seriously, this profession, this calling. So keep it up, my brother, and I'll talk to you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.